Hi, and welcome to my podcast, What's the Value of Addiction? My name is Brendon. I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and I've been sober since April 2022. On this podcast, I will share my journey and the tools I've used to create a life that is not perfect, but a lot kinder and truer for me. I hope it can be a contribution to you so that you know that no matter where you are on this journey, something truly different is possible. Okay, here we are, Miss Marilyn Bradford. Thank you for being on my podcast.
Thank you for having me and inviting me.
So I was telling you before we started about this podcast. Basically, I was like doing it for addiction and alcoholism, and then it turned out with the conversations that I've had, really just for the people who are seeking something different.
Yeah.
So I recalled something this morning that was actually, you and I had a conversation before I got sober, and it was actually a huge contribution. You and I did a session. And one of the things that you said to me was, well, what do you actually desire to create with this? And you gave me some options. You said, do you want to be able to keep choosing what you're choosing, but get a different result? Do you actually want to get free of this? Or do you want to just keep going the same way that you're going? And I was like, and you know what the answer actually was? I don't know if I said this to you.
You didn't say anything.
Okay, so here's the answer. Here's what the answer was. You ready? I want to keep doing exactly what I'm doing, and I want to get a different result, please.
Right.
Yeah. And so there you go. I was so grateful for that, because it was one of those things, where it plants a seed.
Yeah.
And
I
was
remember
like,
that conversation, actually.
yeah, me
Well.
too. And I it's so interesting looking back though at that, and how, man, I was in a fight with myself.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot of us do that with addiction.
Yeah, it's a huge cognitive dissonance. It's like, I know I should stop. I don't want to stop. This reality says I should stop, but it's the only friend I have. And it go on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah. Yeah, that on and on around the merry-go-round. I want to ask you about something, actually. The two letters that will send the world of addiction into a debate, AA.
Right.
And I want to ask you about that, because there's a lot of stuff on it. And when people ask me about it all the time, what's your point of view about AA? And my journey with it has been, I really required it in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at why with that, because it had the structure that I needed to actually recognize what was going on for me.
Right. Right. Well, the interesting thing is, my experience and my awareness with alcohol and alcoholism is that it actually requires a structure. We create a structure with it. Oh,
Yeah.
every night at 5:00, or on Sundays, I buy 3 bottles
5
of
o'clock? Kidding you. If only I could wait until 5 o'clock.
Right, exactly. But, well, I was in AA for like 17 years.
Yeah.
And I would say at the time, it was very helpful to me in the beginning also. There really wasn't anything else out there. Well, I eventually I looked at women for sobriety and all sorts of other things. But I'll tell you about what really got me into AA. So,
Okay.
my then husband and I went down to, I lived in Austin at the time, went down to San Antonio, which was about an hour and a half away, on a Sunday. And we were going to have brunch and go to museums. Well, at brunch, we had, God knows what we had to drink. I mean, it wasn't anything It wasn't anything totally spectacular, but at least a bottle of wine and maybe something else. So we were too out of it to go to the museum. So we came home and my husband went and had a nap. And I went to the corner local grocery store on a Sunday afternoon in Texas at the time. You could buy wine, but you couldn't buy anything stronger. So they had sherry, which is stronger than wine. It's just, can't buy on Sunday. I took the label off and put it somewhere else and went home and proceeded to drink the entire bottle of sherry. At which point I thought, and I'd heard of AA, I heard of the steps. I'm like, because I kept going back into the kitchen and getting more. Maybe I am powerless. Maybe I do need something. And that was actually a good wake-up call.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize at the time was that I was really miserable in my marriage, that I'd never stepped into who I really was. I'd never even known I could do that. I remember when I divorced my husband, he said to me, well, Marilyn, I know I've never considered you and what you want, but couldn't we try again? I'm like, no, I don't think so.
No, I'm done.
Yeah. And a lot of the way I look at addiction is, there's been a real devaluation, diminishment of being, and you need to fit into this and you need to do this. And as humanoids, we're going, what? A lot of abuse. I know very few, or I've met very few alcoholics and other people, whether it's perfectionism or food or whatever it is, that weren't diminished and devalued and gaslighted as kids. And
Right.
and I'm not saying, well, that's the cause, because it's not, because we make choices. But what I found in AA at the time were people who were using other coping skills to not drink. And I stayed sober for years. And we'd meet up for coffee, and people cross addicted to coffee and smoking and everything else, but at least we weren't driving drunk and doing all those kinds of things. And I did the steps and I sponsored people and I had sponsors, and it worked for me for quite a while. And then I found access, and then it didn't work as well. And I became a psychotherapist and I started looking at different things. I remember the last meeting I went into, and it was after I was in access, was, hi, my name is Marilyn, and I've been addicted to anti-consciousness and unconsciousness, and I'm making different choices now.
How'd that go down?
Well, a
Did
few
you get
people
some
were
help?
like, whoa. And other people were like, what's she talking about? So I don't know. But I do see that it can be very valuable to people, particularly in the beginning of a path to choosing something different. And you have support. You
Yeah.
have support, because I also get that people who don't drink a lot don't really get it. They just don't get it.
Well, that's an interesting part of what I've found with alcoholism. Was like I was having a conversation with a friend in Costa Rica a few months ago, and she was like, she watched me go through all of this stuff, and she was like, I didn't understand it, and I don't think any of us did.
Ah,
I don't think any of us, because people would look at me with the same of, why are you not just making a different choice?
mm-hmm. It
Why do you
takes
keep
us
doing
over.
it?
It really does. And
Yeah,
it's that whole thing that, I mean, if you were to cut it out, I remember, I can't imagine who would support me,
yeah.
or what would support me, or who would be my friend, or what would I do when I don't have anything else to do on Saturday? This is my best buddy.
That was one of the interesting things for me to learn, was how to be with myself.
Yes, because you're
Yeah,
not with yourself with addiction,
no,
ever.
ever, ever, ever. And so the space and the silence and you know what even was really difficult to begin to learn how to deal with, was a sense of lightness.
Sense of
lightness.
Lightness.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because one of the things that would actually trigger me the most was when I would get too happy, or when I would get too free, or when I would get um, too much different from the energy of who I decided I was.
Yeah. Can I ask a question, Brendon?
Please. Yeah.
How much of that was the wrongness of being light growing up, or the
Oh, totally.
possibility of it?
Totally. It
Yeah.
was, and I still actually struggle with that sometimes one of the things I had to get really present with was I always thought it was really uncomfortable to be fucked up. But what I found was it was actually really comfortable. That was
Yes.
such an energy that I was familiar with. The
Yeah.
energy of not being fucked up.
Yeah.
I can tell you how I know that it was far less comfortable was I would choose it far less.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. That sense of wrongness is so pervasive
Yeah,
for people who grow up with abuse or anything like that. Yeah.
totally. Hey, you just sparked something. I want to I want to ask you about something. I want to ask you about choice because one of the things that I've heard you talk about with addiction is being grateful for the thing that you have been addicted to. Like say alcohol, for example. I remember you telling a story about some lady once when you were like, well, how much was it there to actually serve you?
Yeah. Well, my second husband always said that, and we actually met in AA. He
Uh-huh.
said that
Oh, really?
alcohol and drugs kept me alive till I could find a different possibility.
Mm,
And a lot of what I found in working with people is that it's a coping skill. It's the only thing they know. So okay, so you're drinking 2 bottles of wine a night. What's going on in your life? Well, my foster kids are acting out. My husband lost his job. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I go out on the patio at night and I drink 2 bottles of wine. Oh, what if we looked at some other ideas for dealing with your foster kids? They're the alcoholic, and I don't even know if I'm an alcoholic or not. I don't think I'm actually allergic to alcohol, but I do know I acted like one and I used it a lot.
right.
But people are not given life skills, period. And it's easy to go have a drink or go do a drug when you have no idea how to cope with what's going on in your life. No
Yeah.
one's ever said, hey, let's get some parenting skills. Let's get some, relationship skills. RDD, relationship done different. Let's find some different ways of being with things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's empower you. That's the thing. Most people who have issues with alcohol, well, I would pretty much say 99.9, the access 99,000 percentage, they don't have any skills at all. They don't even know there's a different possibility. And even if you're in access, I think it's very difficult in the beginning for access to, you may use the skills kind of up here, but it's so ingrained that alcohol is your best friend and that it's the only thing that can really serve you and all of that, that it's hard to make that leap.
Yeah. Well, I remember finding access 15 years ago and I knew like it wasn't a cognitive knowing, but when I look back at it now, I knew I was an alcoholic. I knew I was an alcoholic from the first drink I took, because everybody would be like, yay, let's go and do something fun. And I'd be like, yay, let's find more alcohol. You know, one was never enough for me. It was like, can we just drink more? That sounds like more fun. But I remember finding access and And I was like, wow, people are drinking. I've found my people. I can
Wow.
hide.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can hide even in the thing that I found to stop hiding.
Right. Right.
And that's been the part that I wanted to talk about with choice also is because I see a lot of things where it's separate from create the separation in order to create the distance between you and what you've decided is the problem. Which
Say
so
more
for me
about
it
that.
was so for me it was alcohol, and I'd hear people go, okay, so now don't be around alcohol. Don't be
Oh,
around people that drink alcohol. Separate from alcohol in order to create the distance that will create the change,
which doesn't
and
work.
which never works. And
Right.
but also in the beginning with exploring that, it was interesting because now the choice part being, I know I have choice to go and have a drink right now.
Hmm.
I also know what that would create.
Right.
And that's the part that I think with people in getting clear of whether they even desire to have change with something, whether it be social media, whether it be, judging the shit out of yourself, whether it be cocaine, alcohol, whatever, is the I guess that one moment where you start to look at what's this actually creating as my life?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that willingness to be aware of the future that choice creates.
Yeah.
And that choice, every choice you make today creates your future. And I think when you're drinking, when you're more alcoholic, it's like, yeah, my future is when does the liquor store open? It's just kind
Yeah.
yeah.
But
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 the
but
thing I tell people about choice is
uh
you may not have a sense that you have the choice to stop using alcohol or drugs today,
yeah.
but you have the choice to ask questions and ask yourself, do I desire to make a change? And if so, you have a choice to investigate what could create that. And at any time along that path, you have a choice to go, not doing it. It's really 10-second increments.
Well, I remember you talking about this actually in something that I heard you say of uh when you go to, I think it may have been on alcohol again, is when you go to have that drink, why don't you wait a minute?
Yeah. Wait 20 seconds or 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite ones with that, and it's so much about your point of view creates your reality. And I don't know if we've talked about this, but I had a client she'd gotten sober and she was like, well, my friends are coming to town. This was when I was living in Austin, and we're going out for Mexican food. And I always have a drink with Mexican food. Now, she wasn't doing a big AA sobriety program, but she'd stopped drinking. She said, what do I do? I said, well, why don't you order a margarita and drink it with awareness? That means you pick it up, you smell it. I mean, she wasn't a like big down and out alcoholic, and she decided she had a problem. Take a sip, roll it around, see what you think, put it down, come back, see me next week. So she came back the next week and she said, you know what, Marilyn? I don't even like margaritas. But she had this whole idea. Your point of view creates what you've decided is your reality.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting though? I don't even
Yeah,
like margaritas. I'm pretty sure by the end of drinking, I didn't even like drinking.
I bet that's true. Yeah.
You know, interesting. Um, so what else do you know that you would like to share with the world about, I guess, a different perspective on addiction?
Well, one of the things that, because I do Right Recovery for You, that I really, really, really would like people to know, and I have a call coming up called The Silent Killer, which is that yes, alcohol and drugs kill, definitely. And there's so many other forms of addiction. I look at addiction as an energy looking for a target.
Mm,
And this reality considers that alcohol and drugs, which is fine, But what happens to the general public is, I'm not one of them. I don't have a problem with that. Not a problem. But
Yeah.
it's really about leaving yourself, leaving your being, leaving your life. So addiction can show up in perfectionism and being right and being wrong and judgment and being the healthiest person on the block, being the perfect mom. It can show up in so many different ways. And people would say, well, why does that kill you? Why does that hurt you? I mean, an obvious one is food, because anorexia, I mean, there's so many different ways to be addicted to food and eating and not eating and all of this. It's easy to see how it affects the body, and people do die from that. But even something like perfectionism or fixing other people's problems, you're leaving your being, you're leaving yourself to engage in whatever that is. And maybe you're leaving work early, you're leaving your family that really needs you, and oh, well, I have to go help Johnny. Well, that's going to put a strain on everything in your life. And that's what addiction does. It puts a strain on your body. It puts a strain on everything in your life: work, family, friendships, creativity, because the default position is that behavior or that substance or that person or that ideology. We certainly know people get addicted to being right wing or left wing. It consumes you. You don't have choice.
Yeah.
So, and that's something I really, really, really would like people to know. And the thing about that is, any kind of behavior or substance or whatever, I always use this use, abuse, and addiction. Go back to alcohol. Use is, oh, I'm having dinner with friends. I think I'll have a glass of wine. No, that's nice. There's nothing about it that's compulsive. And that applies to anything. I'm going to run 10 miles today. Okay, I'm not doing that for a while. Abuse is more when you're aware that you're using a substance or an activity in a way it's not meant to be used. Sure, a glass of wine with dinner? Absolutely. Coming home, oh, my kid is driving me bonkers. I think I'm going to have 2 glasses of wine before I even address it. That's abuse. That's using something for what it really wasn't intended to be used for. And then addiction is where it's so compulsive, you just really can't not do it, whatever the
Yeah,
circumstances.
totally. And also the addiction is I can justify the abuse.
Yes, exactly.
You could, the thing with alcoholism is, and definitely for me was, you could create any story to justify why you're choosing it. I'm really good at that, actually. There you go.
It's because you're creative. You're a humanoid.
Totally.
I think it's hard to be an alcoholic if you're not creative.
Well, that was the other part with AA that, with talking about that, is because I know for me, it was vital in getting sober.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I did like a shit ton of meetings.
Right.
But the thing that didn't work for somebody like me or somebody out there listening to this who is, a seeker in this world, who is creative, who is kind of, call it sensitive or aware of the world around you, is it doesn't teach you how to create your life.
No, not at all. And it
It
doesn't
doesn't give
connect
you
you
the
to your
tools.
body either.
Yeah.
Both things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that must have been interesting to have all the access tools of how to create your life, and then to be in AA, which is, are you doing this? Which step are you on? Are you on your amends?
Well, what was actually, I had this, I had a sponsor who was a asshole of magnitude, but I loved him. I was so great. I didn't love him at the time.
Yeah.
I thought he was just the biggest asshole in the world, and he possibly was, but I'm so grateful for him because the structure he forced upon me
Yes.
was so required. One of the things that he did was, you have to call me every single day and tell me what's going on for you. It's called accountability.
Wow.
And I was like, account of what? And so I would call him every day, and I was so grateful because it got me present with everything that was actually going on. Because if I had in the past, if I was having a bad day, I would separate from that energy and and make choices to prove that I wasn't. I wasn't allowing myself just to fall apart if that was what was
Right.
required.
Right.
And so that part was so it was so helpful to have those certain aspects of structure to show me different ways of being with myself.
Yeah. That's cool. It does seem like you created what was required for you, Brendon, at the time.
Yeah. I love it now that I can look at that, look at that stuff and laugh. But that's also the other thing that I would like to share as an inspiration for people is if you're listening to this and you've fucking just at your wits end with it and do not see how anything is possible, do not see how anything could be different, how your life could change, how this could all turn around, man, do I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you even telling me when we were having the session before, long, long time ago before you got sober. You said, "Well, don't tell me I can't drink before a class.
That's so good.
I'm not going to tell
Oh,
you to do anything or not do anything. It's just a
well, you
choice."
should. Yeah, but if you would have not told me, then I could have done it and blamed it on you.
Exactly.
Damn it.
I wasn't being cooperative.
That's so good.
But
Yeah,
we all, I mean, I remember defending my right to drink. I really do. It's just what we do,
totally. Oh man, defending everything.
defending everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually one of my I remember writing this list of fears, and at the top of that was never having an awareness of what I'm actually capable of.
Wow. How are you doing
Underneath,
with that one these days?
oh, that one's a continually unfolding journey,
Yeah.
but man, it's I'm so grateful. But the other thing on there was showing up in the world sober.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't it interesting how we have this, I don't know, call it an addiction or whatever, to not being seen.
Well, it wasn't safe. And as growing up, I mean, I, in my own childhood, it wasn't safe to be seen.
Mm,
My sister very much was out there and was being seen and always got into trouble. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. And I don't think many people get how imprinted these childhood choices and patterns are and how
yeah.
they affect us as adults. You may have made a choice at 4, it's not safe to be seen, and you're carrying it on into your 30s. And it's totally irrational and totally non-cognitive, and we do carry that stuff.
One of the things I realized with you saying that was I realized that a huge part of alcohol, well, call it whatever, but a big part of it for me was understanding those who I could not understand.
Yeah.
Understanding the people that I grew up with. I was like, what?
Yeah. It's complete bewilderment. What the
Yeah.
hell? Yeah.
And that's what I love about the stuff you're doing with Right Recovery. I want to tell people about that. Check that out, please. Right Recovery for you. That's the website, right?
Yes, it's part of the MarilynBradford.com website, but yes,
Okay. There you
absolutely.
go. MarilynBradford.com. But also that part of even just with you touching on that of the how did you put it? Conditioning, but it wasn't the word conditioning.
Well,
Imprinting.
imprinting. Yeah.
Imprinting. That's where the only thing that I've found that actually changes that is POC and pod, access.
Uh-huh.
And that's where it's been that's where it's man, I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that I have these tools.
Yeah, me too. Really, I wouldn't be where I was today without them. I used to do a class, and I haven't done it in a long time, called From the Language of Abuse to the Language of Consciousness. But basically, it was that your family spoke an energetic language. I don't care if your family spoke Swahili or French or
I think mine
Chinese.
spoke Swahili.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. That's why you couldn't understand them.
That's it.
They're speaking English and they were speaking Swahili. But we pick up, like my family, I tell this story that so my maternal grandmother had two daughters. Each of them had two daughters. There were four of us. There was no history of alcoholism in the family ever. But three of the daughters became essentially alcoholic and one became a raging codependent. And it was because of the energy of addiction that was so prevalent. My mother was addicted to criticism and penuriousness, and my father was addicted to workaholism. It just works itself out how it works itself out. But you learn that language. You learn the language of anger, or you learn the language of abuse. And, that's a language you learn besides whatever the verbal language is.
I say start learning the language of kindness for yourself.
Yes, that's beautiful, Brendon. Absolutely.
And for an addict or an alcoholic, that may be one of the most uncomfortable languages you'll ever learn.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
I've said to people, what if you were kind to you? And they're like, what does that mean?
What?
What?
Well, I remember in the beginning of my sobriety actually having a look at what kindness for me would be, because what I had used as kindness for myself was, let me avoid everything that I've judged as not kind about me.
Wow. Yeah. That's
And so kindness for me, sometimes that was a seriously fucking strong talk with myself.
Yeah.
Looking at where I was choosing against myself or others, looking at where I was choosing to be in judgment, looking at all of that stuff. And I was like, oh, that was a different awareness of what kindness is.
Yeah. Cool. That can be very helpful for people to hear, Brendon. Kindness is not always.
Yeah, I know. Big difference between kindness and niceness.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you so much for asking me. This is really great conversation. I got a lot from it.
Well, you've done so much. I really am grateful for you, and that some of those early on contributions that may have gone unnoticed, I would like you to know that they were huge contributions. There were certain things like that I look back on and I'm like, wow, that it planted a seed.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And you are an inspiration, Brendon. Really. The changes that you made, and going, it was pretty dramatic. What you lost.
Yeah, it was pretty dramatic. Yep.
And you turned it all around, and you've really created so much more. It's an inspiration for lots of people. Me too.
Thank you. I think it's mainly, I think maybe my family spoke the energy of Swahili, but then I also maybe have some Latino,
A little trauma.
Yeah, it's a little trauma and drama. Just yes. I adore you, Marilyn. Thank you for being here. Check out Right Recovery for You and MarilynBradford.com.
Yes.
Thank you.
And how do people get in touch with you? I guess they know that. Brendon what?
I have no idea. Just
Brendon. Hey, Brendon, where are you?
Brendon, where are you? Help me. No, BrendonWatt.com. You can check me out also.
Okay.
Thank you for listening. Thank you so much for listening. I am grateful for your presence. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to subscribe and share it with a friend that might benefit from these conversations. For more resources, check out my website, BrendonWatt.com, and what else is possible you have never considered.